that Donald Trump and the White House make a serious miscalculation during the Iran war. Now we are in the 4th day of the war and it has been spiraling out of control. Specifically that we have now reached a point of no return where neither side wants to back down from the fear of not military capabilities but from the fear of political capabilities, because now the conflict has reached to a point where if either side backs down, it will face problems at its own house. So yesterday the markets also opened for the first time after the beginning of the war, and it has not been looking good. Specifically, almost all the stock exchanges in the world other than Israel's and Russia's, for some reason. I mean, obviously Israel is working on a long-term basis, that now they believe that a long-term threat has been removed from their future investment perspective, and Russia is rising from the perspective is that they are the only country that is able to fulfill for the gap that is now being made by the Gulf energy that is being stopped. So specifically, if you see the strikes yesterday, the Iranian missiles and drone strikes have increased, and one of them hit the Saudi Aramco facility and the other ended up hitting Qatar Energy's LNG plant, which immediately resulted in a rise of around 50% for European energy markets, and it indeed did raise alarms in Asia such as India and China and Japan as well. So where does this conflict look on from now? Did the White House make a serious miscalculation in this? And my answer is yes. So Israel and United States have been carpet bombing in a sense Tehran for the past 3 days. They have almost blown up entirety of the Iranian Navy's major surface combatants. We still don't know what happened to the 22 submarines that the Iranian Navy operates, but they're probably at sea or they're either destroyed. That is one of the possibilities. Then the nuclear plants were reported to have been blown up by Israel and the United States. But then the International Atomic Energy Agency came in and they said that they have not seen any visible damage to the nuclear facilities. And now that's not to say that they did not strike, they obviously would have, but destroying a nuclear facility, especially after Iran has seen how Syria and Libya and Iraq were treated, they would have definitely worked on to harden their facilities. So that is why I see probably that the reason why the International Atomic Agency did say that they have not seen any specific visible damage. So that could be another reason. And then talking about the propaganda that's going on from both sides. Yesterday, 3 F-15E Strike Eagles of the US Air Force were shot down apparently by their own defenses. I do not get how that works, especially when you have identification friend or foe systems. Yes, sometimes mistakes can be made. Maybe they would have forgotten to turn on the IFF or something like that. But 3 aircraft in a single day, and that too also like within the time frame of an hour or two, all 3 were destroyed. And only 3 that we know of. There could have been more. And let's be real that while we have seen Iran's horrible propaganda of saying that they are sinking a US aircraft carrier, which again, I don't think that even is possible, because the moment that happens, the war gets completely political on the US side. It kind of, you have to correlate that with the Pearl Harbor situation, when a lot of US sailors were killed and US directly declared war on Japan. So that would be the same scenario here if in case Iran did manage to even mission kill a US carrier. So I do not personally believe that the chances of sinking a carrier are high, but propaganda has been completely high from both sides. So yesterday another image came from the apparent image of the US embassy in Riyadh, which was apparently in extremely high flames, which has now been detected to be an AI image. So Iran obviously is doing a lot of propaganda, but the US has also been doing a lot of propaganda, and that in the sense is because while they claim that they have suffered minimal damage or they have intercepted all the missiles, I do not believe so, because when you see videos from the ground, and I have also verified this videos as well, because obviously in a fog of war situation, when you have minute by minute updates, you are going to see recycled footage from other conflicts, but the situation on the ground does not look good. Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, they have all been getting struck badly, and even Israel has suffered quite a bit of damage. And while they claim only, the US has only claimed 6 casualties by now, 6 killed in action casualties and some injuries as well, but I think that the number might be way higher, because I refuse to believe personally that you can have such enormous destruction of your air bases and your the Fifth Fleet HQ in Bahrain, but you only suffer 6 casualties. Again, could be possible. Not to say that the US is completely lying, but propaganda is going on from both sides, but the Iranian side has been doing it a lot more. And then talking about the attacks on the civilian infrastructure by US and Israel. For no reason, I do not see any reason of carpet bombing Tehran or other cities. They may claim that, there are soldiers sitting inside civilian buildings, and there were also unverified reports that around 600 kids were killed in a school in Iran. Again, that is not verified, so I cannot comment on that. But I do not think that the way Israel and US are bombing Iran is a good precedent, and that is why the Iranians have decided to strike major Gulf cities like Dubai, Abu Dhabi or Doha, and the damage suffered is extensive. While they, again, all of these countries have claimed that we have not suffered any missile impacts, we have not suffered any drone impacts. Alright, let us assume for a second that all of that is true, because right now we are not in the Middle East to actually verify the situation properly. There are going to be on-ground propaganda from both of the sides, but the way I see it is that right now, the initial 5-6 days are going to be okay for the American-Israeli coalition side. What happens after that, when the interceptor stockpiles start to run out, when your munition stockpiles start to run out? If Donald Trump claims that Iran and the Israel and the United States have bombed the Iranian cities by dropping over 1,200 bombs, where are they going to keep getting the munitions? Because obviously you are not going to empty out your entire stockpile. Now, while Donald Trump claims that they have the most stockpile ever since the beginning of his presidency, and that President Biden did not have anything, again, that is internal US politics. I do not want to comment about that, because that is completely, I do not get why Trump hates Biden or Obama so much. So that is not a part where I'm going to comment. But to a point that today I saw news on a Korean newspaper where it has been said that the US is planning to move interceptors from South Korea to the Middle East, which is a dangerous thing, because the moment you remove interceptors from South Korea, which is a place that needs it more than Israel. Israel actually has a lot of good interceptors with them. They produce their own air defenses. Israel doesn't even use American air defenses. So moving that from South Korea or say Japan would be a huge mistake in hindsight, because if China or North Korea decided to take the opportunity, let's be real, the conflict is no longer between US and Iran, or Israel or Iran. It has widened up to a regional conflict. Iran has blocked the Strait of Hormuz permanently, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have begun mining the strait as well. But I do feel that at this point it has widened up to a regional war, and we can compare the assassination of Ali Khamenei to what happened in World War I with Archduke Ferdinand. And let's hope that the situation doesn't turn out to be like that. Although the countries now, we are like in a situation where it is unlikely that a world war or something happens, because the economies are too interconnected. But again, you cannot completely rule that out. It is always possible that something or the other might end up wrong, and some other side takes up the advantage of the situation, especially with Russia. After killing Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, I think the US has set a precedent that if Vladimir Putin decides to order an airstrike on President Zelensky's house, the US cannot say anything about that, because you have set a precedent yourself. You opened up an entire conflict by killing the top leadership of Iran. That is a decapitation strike, and I don't think that is allowed under international law. Please correct me down in the comments if I'm wrong. But now you have set a precedent for Russia to do it in Ukraine, China to do it in Taiwan, India to do it in Pakistan, North Korea to do in South Korea. That is not a good precedent. I do not think that that is a good idea. And then talking about American credibility, how all of this affects American credibility. I think this affects American credibility a lot, because yesterday a Saudi minister talked to a media house. I'm forgetting which media house, but they talked to a media house and they specifically said that the US has dropped the Gulf countries and are specifically focusing on providing attacks for the interceptors for Israel. And the moment that if that is actually true, you are going to lose your credibility with your other partners that depend on you, specifically Taiwan, Australia, Japan, South Korea, NATO, and Canada as well. You are going to lose your credibility, and that is what I think where the miscalculation has happened from the White House's side, that they are thinking too much in the short term. Even if they manage to win this conflict, other allies now think that you are not dependable, and the first country that will move towards a nuclear proliferation now is Japan, and I can guarantee that I'll write it on a paper and give it to you. Now obviously I do not have any proof for that, but from a sheer analysis point, when we see that if you don't have nuclear weapons, your entire country, your entire leadership gets bombed into oblivion, no serious middle power would want to deal with that anymore. And I think that's where South Korea, Japan, Germany, Sweden, all of these countries will now begin to look towards their own nuclear weapons. So that is a very dangerous precedent, I believe, that has set by this by the Gulf War II, as I would call it myself. I think people might not agree with the terminology, but it is more or less moving towards the same situation. And then yesterday, Iran also struck the RAF base in Cyprus, and that is sovereign UK territory. That is not Cypriot territory. That is sovereign UK territory, which UK kept by giving independence to Cyprus back in the 50s or 60s. I do not remember the year. So Article 5 situation also remains, because the RAF base in Cyprus is sovereign UK territory, and Article 5 covers the territory from North America to Europe. So, and then there were also some unverified reports that Iran has struck Turkey, which again was not proven properly, but that is something for the possibility that cannot be ruled out. So I do not think that the precedent has been set here well. And lastly, I would like to talk about where this is going to move on from now. So I do not believe the conflict is going to stop. That is not going to happen, as Donald Trump himself claimed that they are planning for a conflict of up to 4 to 5 weeks now. That is pretty realistic to say. I would even argue as to say that it will last 2 to 3 more months. And Donald Trump also claims that they are not ruling out putting boots on the ground, which is unrealistic to honestly, because to capture Iran, that is not Iraq. You have to send a minimum of 900,000 to 1,000,000 troops to gain proper control of Iran. So again, I do not believe that is just pure political rhetoric, according to me. Could be wrong. That's just my analysis. You can agree or disagree with that. But I don't think that putting boots on the ground is any sort of reliable situation in this scenario. And then I would like to discuss whether the assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was a good idea. And to my mind, that was the worst idea that they could have chosen, because earlier the Iranian people themselves, they were not happy with how the economic situation was playing out. So instead of directly striking Ali Khamenei and killing him in the first strike, they could have bombed Iran for the first 4 or 5 days, so that the people themselves gave accountability that, okay, this guy was the reason that we are getting bombed, we should kick him out, we should change the regime ourselves. That is where they missed it out, because the moment they killed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and I think they even killed his future successor that was appointed as the temporary supreme leader, I do not remember his name, but the moment they killed him, that completely ruined the accountability for the United States. So this was not a good situation at all, according to me. They should have waited for a few days until they assassinated the supreme leader of Iran. But now they have rallied even the disgruntled population around Iran, contrary to the claims. We see that in social media, Iranian people are dancing, but half of them that they are dancing, they are Iranian immigrants to the US or Europe or Canada. You don't know how the mentality of people is like in Iran. And I have been seeing some on-ground footage that people are genuinely upset about the US striking them despite their dissatisfaction with Ali Khamenei. So that is indeed, I think that was the worst decision that they could have made. That was again, I was not in the White House wargaming room. They probably they are all of the generals and analysts there are much more experienced than me. This is just my analysis, my opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but this is what I feel that should not have been done, because the moment they did this, they widened the entire conflict from US, Israel versus Iran to the entire Gulf region versus Iran. And now even France and UK are joining the conflict. I've even seen news that Germany is joining the conflict. Not too sure whether that's true, but that is not a good precedent. So in my opinion, the markets are not doing good now. We have seen that the Brent crude has increased to around $80 per barrel. Gold itself has increased a lot. Silver has increased, and we are seeing the collapse of a lot of, not collapse in a sense, 2 to 3% decrease in all major stock exchanges around the world. So again, that is again another worse problem. And then we have to realize that the energy problems in Europe will increase, because after they sanctioned Russia, a lot of European energy began to come from the Gulf. And now that you have destroyed or at least temporarily knocked out Aramco and Qatar energy from the global market, there is going to be a serious energy crisis if the conflict doesn't stop in the next week or so. So that is something that we have to see. I don't know how much they're going to compensate that with Venezuelan crude or US shale. I don't think that they can compensate the entire Gulf oil, because the US does not have the capacity to ramp up production immediately. Even if US may have the reserves of shale, they cannot immediately just bring them out from the well and start selling it to people. The infrastructure is just not present to cater to the capability that the Gulf refineries have. So that is where I feel that the miscalculations have been made. Again, you all can disagree or agree with me down in the comment section below. And I would just like to see the conflict end, because the conflict is not good for anyone. And let's be honest that when you attack a country, you cannot change the mindset of people. That has to be very clear. You may install a new regime, you may install a new ruler, you may put your military bases in the country. You cannot change the mindset of a few million people who do not agree with you. And that is where insurgencies are always born. ISIS in Syria, then Al-Qaeda after the Soviet-Afghan war. Then you had Pakistan keeps not even talking about Pakistan, because they harbor terrorists for no reason, even when Kashmir is a part of India and Kashmiris are happy in India. So that is not something I would like to comment, because we are not even talking about Pakistan. Pakistan is facing a serious internal crisis when the US Marines in Karachi's consulate, they shot upon the protesters that began to burn the consulate down. So that is another serious internal crisis that is going on. And even TV channels in Pakistan kind of like got hacked, and they were trying to incite psychological operations and violence that a certain section of your army is working against the country. That may be true, that may be not. I do not know, so I cannot comment on that. But situation is indeed looking grim in Pakistan, and the situation from the Gulf War is actually worse in Pakistan, because if Pakistan somehow disintegrates, which is a very low probability, the protests are high, the situation is grim, the inflation is an all-time high, and Pakistan does not have a lot of reserves. But if Pakistan somehow manages to disintegrate, that is a global problem. That is a problem for India, obviously. That is a problem for China, because they sit right on the border. That is the problem for Israel, because Pakistani missiles do apparently reach Israel. So that is going to be another problem. So that is what I believe that this conflict is heading towards. And it indeed is a big miscalculation from Donald Trump and his wargaming team, especially as per me. They could have thought something else. They might have other plans. We would just have to wait and see how this conflict plays out. Again, analysis is not prediction. It is just something that we have our own opinions about what we see the future as looking forward. So thank you all so much for watching. And if you are in the Gulf region, if you are in Israel, please take care of yourself and follow your government's respective guidelines. If you're in Iran, do the same. Stay in shelters and beware. Follow the military leaflets that drop in social media of warnings about potential attacks, and follow your government's advisories and keep yourself safe. And do let me know in the comments if you are from any of the regions that are facing the war, how the situation is like in there. Thank you all so much for watching, and I shall see you all in the next video. Take care and Jai Hind.